It began as most deceptions do, quietly, carefully, with the confidence of someone who believed they were smarter than everyone else. The cheat had always been that way, slipping between shadows, speaking with a silver tongue, pretending to be a friend while plotting like an enemy. He wore charm like a mask, smiling in ways that made people lower their guard, convincing them to hand over their trust without a second thought. For a while, it worked flawlessly. He built his life not on hard work or honesty, but on the backs of those who believed in him. He borrowed money he never intended to repay, whispered promises he never meant to keep, and took credit for efforts that weren't his. He believed he had perfected the art of winning, without ever playing fair. I was one of those who trusted him, though not at first. Something in me always felt uneasy about his too smooth words, his stories that glittered like fool's gold. But when others swore by his charm, when friends vouched for him, I silenced my doubts. That silence cost me more than I could have imagined. He wormed his way into my circle, into my plans, even into my future, and by the time I realized it, the damage was already done. He betrayed me in the most ruthless way, publicly, cunningly, leaving me to carry the weight of his lies while he strutted away with the prize.
For him, it was a victory. For me, it was devastation.
People believed him because he was loud, confident, and quick with words, while I was left reeling, trying to defend myself against an attack I hadn't seen coming. For a time, he truly thought he had won. He basked in the glow of stolen success, feeding on admiration that didn't belong to him. He enjoyed the comforts bought by dishonesty, laughed at those he fooled, and convinced himself he was untouchable. To him, life was a game, and he believed he had mastered the rules. But the thing about cheats is that they forget one simple truth. What is built on lies cannot stand forever. Slowly, cracks began to show. People he had deceived before started speaking up, quietly at first, then louder. Inconsistencies in his story surfaced, small lies unraveling into bigger ones. Those who once defended him began to hesitate, doubts spreading like fire through dry grass. The downfall was not immediate, it never is, but it was certain. Opportunities stopped coming his way. Promises of loyalty turned cold. The money he thought would never run dry began to slip from his hands as debts and demands caught up with him. And when he tried to use his old tricks, those practiced smiles, those easy lies, they no longer worked. People had learned, the same way I had learned, that behind the charm was nothing but greed and manipulation. I watched all of it unfold. I didn't need to lift a finger. The truth did all the work. The very foundation of his false victories crumbled beneath him. The friends who once cheered him on turned away, disgusted by how easily they had been used. The power he had stolen slipped from his grasp, and with every loss, his confidence broke apart. In the end, he was left with nothing. No money, no friends, no reputation to lean on. The man who had once laughed at others' ruin was now the one everyone pitied, or worse, ignored. He had thought he won, but victory built on betrayal always collapses. And though I carried scars from what he did to me, there was a strange sense of justice in watching his world unravel. He had played the role of the clever cheat, but life has a way of stripping masks away. When his fell, there was nothing underneath but emptiness. He thought he had conquered, but in the end, he lost everything. He wasn't just a cheat, he was an architect of illusions. Every move he made was calculated, every word sharpened to slice through doubt. People said he had a way of making you feel seen, understood, even valued. It was all a performance, though, designed to keep the audience distracted while he pulled strings behind their backs. At first, he stole little things, credit for small ideas, recognition for tasks half done. No one noticed. No one cared. If anything, people clapped him on the back, admiring his confidence. That taste of unearned glory only fed his hunger. Soon he was reaching higher, seizing opportunities that weren't his, weaving lies so seamlessly into truth that even the careful couldn't untangle them. He told me once, in a moment of arrogance, people believe what they want to believe. You just have to give them the right story. I should have taken it as a warning, but I didn't. Instead, I remembered the smile that followed, The way he said it like a man confessing a harmless trick, as though deceiving others was no different than a magician pulling a rabbit from a hat. The betrayal, when it came, was brutal in its precision. I had worked for months on something that mattered to me, something I believed would change everything. I shared it with him in confidence, thinking I had found a partner, someone who could help bring it to life. He listened, nodded, encouraged, then, without hesitation, took it as his own. He presented my work to others, polished with his silver words, and left me standing in the shadow of my own effort. The humiliation cut deeper than the theft itself. I tried to fight back, tried to make the truth known, but people only heard what they wanted to hear. He had already spun his version of events, painting me as unprepared, unreliable, unworthy. They believed him because he made it easy to believe. I watched doors close, watched opportunities slip away, while he walked into them with my stolen key. And, oh, how he reveled in it. The look in his eyes when he thought no one was watching was unforgettable, not joy, not gratitude, but a cold satisfaction. He believed he had outplayed me, outplayed everyone, and he wore that belief like armor. He thought it made him invincible. But arrogance blinds more thoroughly than any lie. He grew careless. Greed does that to a man. Once he tasted victory, he needed more, always more, until even those closest to him felt the sting of betrayal. The same friends who defended him became his next victims. The same allies he leaned on became stepping stones beneath his boots. He could not help himself. Deception was no longer a tool. It was his nature. One by one, the people who once trusted him began to notice the cracks. Whispers spread, quiet at first, cautious, but persistent. Discrepancies in his stories were compared, and the truth began to leak through the seams. He tried to patch them with more lies, but each lie only birthed another, larger, until his carefully woven web collapsed under its own weight. I will never forget the moment I saw him stumble. He stood before a crowd, one of the very groups that had once praised him, and for the first time, his words faltered. They didn't look at him with admiration anymore. They looked at him with suspicion, with disgust. His voice wavered. His smile failed. The mask slipped. From there, his fall was not swift but excruciatingly slow. Deals fell through. Debts surfaced. People demanded answers he could no longer invent. His wealth drained away. His so-called friends abandoned him. And he, the man who once strutted with borrowed crowns, found himself standing alone in ruins of his own making. I watched, not with vengeance, but with an odd calmness. Life had done what I could not. He had thought he won when he stole from me, when he crushed my trust and walked away with triumph. But he lost it all, everything he clung to, everything he cheated to gain, because lies are a currency that always, eventually, turn worthless. In the end, there was no grand reckoning, no dramatic confrontation, just silence. A man alone, stripped of pretense, staring at the wreckage of what he once thought was victory. And me? I rebuilt, slowly, painfully, but honestly. The scars remain, yes, but so does the lesson. A cheat may win for a while, but time always collects the debt. He was the kind of man who could walk into a room and make it feel smaller, not because he carried presence in the noble sense, but because he demanded attention with the ease of someone who knew how to command it. His voice was steady, his words carefully chosen, and his smile, God, that smile, was disarming enough to make people forget their suspicions. He thrived on that. He wanted the world to lower its guard whenever he appeared. I should have trusted my instincts the first time I met him. There was something too polished about his manner, something rehearsed. But people around me spoke of him with admiration, praising his brilliance, his sharpness, his uncanny ability to make things happen. Against my better judgment, I let myself believe them. At first, he stayed close but not too close, circling like a predator sizing up its prey. He would drop compliments that seemed sincere, show just enough vulnerability to appear human. Then, slowly, he began weaving himself into my life, asking questions, learning what mattered to me, studying my work and my ambitions. I thought it was friendship. I thought it was respect. What it really was, I would later understand, was reconnaissance. The moment of betrayal came not like thunder, but like a knife sliding between ribs, quiet, precise, devastating. I had spent sleepless nights pouring myself into a project that carried my hopes, my sacrifices, my future. When I finally shared it with him, he listened intently, nodding as though he truly cared. He asked the right questions, took notes, even offered advice that seemed thoughtful. But days later, he stood before others, my peers, my superiors, and presented it as his own. My words rolled off his tongue, my ideas cloaked in his voice, and the crowd believed every bit of it. I stood there, invisible, as the applause thundered for him. I tried to speak up, to make my case, but he had already anticipated it. He painted me as someone unreliable, someone grasping for credit where none was due. And because people trusted him, because he had rehearsed his lines so well, they believed him. The humiliation of that moment will never leave me. The sting of betrayal, the laughter of the crowd, the sight of him bowing like a king on a stage I had built. For a time, he lived like a victor. He gathered praise as though it were owed to him, basked in luxuries he had not earned, and wore the mask of success with ease. His eyes sparkled with the arrogance of someone who believed the game was over and that he had won. To him, I was nothing more than a casualty on his path upward. But arrogance breeds carelessness. And a cheat can never stop cheating. It is not a choice, but a compulsion. He lied to those who trusted him, stole from those who supported him, deceived those who admired him. The pattern repeated, always the same, always leaving behind bruised souls who whispered warnings to others. Those whispers grew louder. I heard stories of his betrayals spreading beyond my circle. A deal gone sour here. A partnership broken there. Promises that turned to dust. At first, he laughed them off, confident that his charm could carry him through. But then came the first refusal, the first door closed in his face. Small cracks appeared in the facade, barely visible, but growing. I remember the night I saw him stumble for the first time. He was speaking at a gathering, standing tall, dressed impeccably as always, and yet something was different. The words didn't land as they used to. People shifted uncomfortably, exchanged glances. A question was asked that he couldn't answer, and for the first time, silence stretched where applause should have been. His smile faltered. His hands trembled. It was a small moment, but I recognized it for what it was, the beginning of the end. From there, his downfall was like watching a great ship sink, not with a sudden crash, but with a slow, inevitable descent. Business deals unraveled. Debts surfaced. Friends vanished. He tried to cling to old tricks, but they no longer worked. The lies grew tangled, contradicting one another until even he couldn't keep track of them. His voice lost its power. His smile became hollow. I saw him one last time, long after his throne had turned to ashes. He was sitting alone in a cafe, hunched over a cup of coffee he didn't touch. The once impeccable suit was wrinkled, the once sharp eyes dulled. He looked up and saw me, and in that fleeting moment, I recognized something I had never thought I would see in him. Regret. Not the regret of hurting others. No, I don't believe he ever cared for that. But the regret of losing the empire of lies he thought he had built to last. He dropped his gaze quickly, as though ashamed to be seen. I walked past without a word. There was nothing left to say. He had thought he won, but what he gained was only temporary. What he lost was permanent: trust, respect, the illusion of power he had lived for. And me? I carried the wounds he left, yes, but I also carried resilience. I rebuilt slowly, with honesty as my foundation, and though my rise was not as swift as his, it was steady. I learned that victories built on truth may come later, but they endure. He was the classic cheat who thought he won. But in the end, he lost it all, because time, truth, and memory have a way of catching up, no matter how fast the lies may run.